recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson. I don't even know where to start today, but it is good to see your face on the YouTube channel, as we say it here at My World. March Madness is going on. You know, I'm a basketball junkie, so during this time of year, especially the first 2 days of the tournament, when you got all those games going on, and now this year, I've always followed women's basketball to a certain degree, March Madness, but with my daughter Jaren, highly engaged in college basketball. She knows the ins and the outs. So when you have not one but two March Madness tournaments going on, crazy, kind of crazy. So
there's your game reset.
Man, everybody's talking about it, even right here on the show. I wanted to get your take.
Oh, here's something right there. Did you just hear? What was that?
Yeah, that was a basketball call. We're overdosing on basketball here on My World this morning. I wanted to get your take. I mean, all of a sudden, Alabama is playing North Carolina, the 1-4 seed, later this week in Los Angeles. You're a basketball junkie. Any predictions for my Tide?
Working on bar time. Do you watch I'm assuming you watch Grand Canyon. Wait, yeah, that's the name of the team. Bama, the SEC, they beat each other up all season, and it is similar to football. And man, am I going to get some ACC haters and some Big Ten haters and every other conference. But you know, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Kentucky took the big L early. South Carolina, A&M. Man, it's you know, yes, it's a football conference, but they got some great basketball. So I have a feeling Old Tobacco Road, Chapel Hill is going to be a very tall order. I'd love to see Bama win, but I just don't think they can take down the Tar Heels. And college basketball, it's a different game, man. It is a different game. I don't know if you got a chance to see Oakland take down Kentucky the other night, but as I was watching that one kid have 10 threes and everything and sitting there watching it, and my daughter Jaren, boy, she's going to get mad at me saying this, and I'm just like, that kid is lighting them up. That kid is lighting them up. And of course, you know, I got the love-hate relationship being a volunteer. Big fan. Kentucky has always, or not always, for the most part, come out on the winning side of things when it comes around to basketball. So seeing Kentucky getting taken to the woodshed, and I kept saying, Jaren, that kid is lighting them up. And she had finally had enough of the last outlaw, Conrad. She said, Dad, that ain't a kid. He's a ninth year senior or whatever. He's 24 years old playing against 19-year-old. It's you know, so she went into that. So anyway, I love this time of year in basketball and March Madness. And my buddies over at WBD, we've got the bracket challenge with a few of us AEW talent in there. So I love to talk smack and all kind of stuff like that. But Connie, I think the Roll Tide is going to come to a screeching halt when they face the Tar Heels this week.
What's your call when it's all said and done? Do you like UConn? Do you like Duke? Are you pulling for Houston, Purdue, North Carolina? What do you see at the end?
See,
Arizona?
You're leaving out my Vols.
No, they're not going to win anything.
See, I knew you would just bounce all over that. I mean, you didn't even throw them in like the top. You rattled off at least 7 teams, maybe 18.
Yeah. I said almost all of them except Tennessee because we both know no shot.
Oh, God.
No shot. Better shot of Burrow winning a Super Bowl than the Volunteers holding it up at the end of the season.
That's fighting words.
Yeah. Well, the only nets y'all cut in Tennessee are the ones you catch skunks in. We are excited to be here with you guys today.
Freaking back, but the Vols got a shot. UConn is awful tough. It's gonna be fun. So I'm still my sentimental favorite. The Vols, if they get rolling, they're very hard to stop.
Well, we're excited to be rolling with you here today. We're going to be talking about Destination X 2009. It's an interesting time in the pro wrestling business in 2009. And it's interesting these days, too, because there's a lot of moving parts, boy. It feels like Every day there's another big announcement. Of course, as you're listening to this, pretty historic Monday Night Raw last night that I know everybody's talking about. But more importantly, we are rounding the bases now, getting ready for AEW's big pay-per-view in St. Louis on Sunday, April 21st. Tickets are on sale now. Dynasty, AEWTIX.com, coming your way. And we've announced Bryan Danielson and Will Ospreay for that show. I know you're a wrestling junkie. Jeff, how excited are you for that one?
I have said, I think I did an interview and I retold this story the other day. I think it was before we launched My World, but I was doing the media rounds. Maybe it was for launching My World, but it's been a couple of years ago, and they were asking about all kinds of Mount Rushmore questions and athletic performance and best matches. Not that I was in, just all kinds of random questions, and it came up about who's a great storyteller, and I jumped at that opportunity to say I think Bryan Danielson I'll call it the modern era is the best storyteller in wrestling. I truly believe that, and I think he has a consistent, uncanny ability to tell different stories and different pacing, and not just, I'll just say the story of a match. Bryan is very, very good at, and Will's athletic ability. He's at he's at a different level. I think Kurt Angle in his prime was athletically just at a different level. I think Shawn Michaels in his prime, different level athletically. We could kind of go back through the generations of different talent. But I think Will is right now the most athletically gifted wrestler in the world today. I think that is going to be something that they highlight in numerous ways, but not saying that Will and Kenny and Will and many others have told great stories. I'm looking forward to seeing the entire body of it. It's as we say, they got my money, Connie. They got my money. It's going to be that is in essence a big part of the AEW narrative. Pay-per-view matches and shows take things to a different level, and I think that's something that we lean into about being the alternative brand, the challenger brand, if you will. I'm damn sure looking forward to it, Conrad, and I know you are too, pal.
AEW always delivers on pay-per-view. That has been a dream match for a lot of people for a long, long time. I'm glad it's going to happen, and it's happening in St. Louis of all places. Tickets on sale now, AEWTIX.com. Of course, tomorrow night, Dynamite live coming at you. Sasha Banks has been running roughshod. Oh, my apologies. Mercedes Moné. I'll get used to it. I'll get in the swing of things. Mercedes Moné is shining bright, and she's going to be there on Wednesday. And, of course, going to have a big show this weekend as well. Be sure to catch The Last Outlaw, giving people all over guitar necklaces. Before we get to our topic, and I know that you've got a bunch of meetings coming up for Shoes Baseball, so stay tuned, boys and girls. We're going to have some announcements in the coming weeks that I think you're going to be pretty interested in if you're a big baseball fan or if you're just in that area. But I want to take your temperature. Man, there's this guy across the pond who feels like
Don't start.
He's got something to say about you, man. Are you going to do something about what are we doing? How can I support you? I'm on Team Double J. I don't even like anybody named Tom.
I don't buy it.
You don't buy what?
I don't buy that you don't like Tom.
I've never met Tom.
That's a bunch of crock.
No, dude, I live in Alabama. He ain't never been here.
Well, here we go. I am not buying this. Conrad Thompson, look directly in the camera right now. I mean, directly in the camera.
I'm looking, Jeff. I'm looking right at you right now.
Say, if I ask you,
right,
open up your phone right now and look at your Twitter X DMs.
None from him.
Oh, wait, who's him?
Well, I thought you were going to say Tom.
Oh, there's the gift.
No, I don't. I mean, listen, as you know, I have help with my social. Evan Polisher helps me out every now and again with my social, but I personally, Conrad Thompson, native Alabamian, never spoken to Tom. Not even really sure how to spell his last name.
See, you've got all these never spoken.
I've never emailed him. I've never texted him. I don't even think my phone sends text messages that far. I don't think it does.
BBC Radio, you clowns have got BBC Radio involved in this.
I'll be honest. We can't talk about BBCs. We'll get kicked off YouTube. So whatever you're thinking, we need to just table it. But I don't know this fellow at all. But I think he's cruising for a bruising, and I'm with you.
Oh, poor guy. Are you feeding him the team names? I'll get aside. He is a moron, dude.
I didn't come up with that because I'll be honest. In Alabama, we'd just called you a regular old ordinary asshole, not an arsehole. They're throwing R's in there.
So you know how all this started. Back last year when I was doing the media rounds and I gave Grado a guitar necklace, and it was a nice one.
Well earned.
So I did the media rounds, which I always enjoy doing, and they're in were they in hour blocks or maybe half hour blocks, but there was a bunch of them. And I go out to use the bathroom and then come back in for the next media round, and this clown literally has, because it was in the afternoon, tea time, he had tea and crumpets set up for the interview, and I just obliged himself. I just tried to be nice and cordial. I'm over there promoting the brand, promoting the historic event. Little did I know that it was a complete setup, a complete clown show. Yes, and it's turned into this. And I'll say this, Karen has about had it.
Oh, goodness. I'll tell you, Tom, you're cruising for a bruising. It's one thing you want to talk smack on Double J. But what they teach, what she knows how to do, makes a Memphis punch. And look, not all that serious. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
People have to learn the hard way sometimes. And I, for one, am looking forward to Karen scratching. What's his name again? Tom?
Oh, stop it.
I think she could scratch his eyes out.
Conrad.
I do.
Next thing you know, there'll be my world with Jeff Jarrett featuring Conrad Thompson and Tom Campbell.
I'm not saying that he sent me a shirt.
Oh my God.
I'm not saying that he made me a custom total nonstop arsehole shirt to wear on the show. I'm not saying that at all.
Oh my gosh.
I'm definitely not saying I'll wear one.
This is getting way out of hand. Like completely out of hand.
Well, it's also getting out of hand that we have tried for a few weeks now.
Hey, Conrad.
Yep.
You're having fun. I'm not, because I see where
sorry.
you're going with this. And I'm telling you, the BBC Radio tweet must have put it over. Something tipped the cap. So something rocked the boat. You've really bought into Tom's BS. But if you don't mind pushing this aside for a minute, all kidding aside, Conrad, last week you were very kind and very diplomatic about I think how you said it is. Jeff's been going through some personal stuff.
Yes.
And we'll let him keep it. And I appreciate that and all that. But, I got a couple of different social media like, hey, man, what's going on? And this and that. So, look.
My bad.
It's fine because you did it so respectful. But I do think it's, my world is share it because, as Conrad, Karen's father passed away. We laid him to rest this past Saturday. I think folks who have lived through life and ups and downs with funerals, but I say this with complete respect. It was a beautiful service. Karen's younger brother gave a eulogy. I said a few words. Her older brother said a few words. Obviously, the pastor said a few words, but it was a very, very nice service. And he lived a incredible life. Karen was in 6th grade, Conrad. I don't know if you know this, is when he got his first leukemia diagnosis.
Wow.
And given 6 months to live. That's in 1982. So just kind of amazing life. He really battled that many, many times on his deathbed. But the older brother was able to give the transplant, and he got to go back to work, and so he lived a full, long life. And passed away at 77 years of age from a lot of complications. But man, oh man, life is good. You know, him coming out of that, and man, they're Karen and her family up. You can only imagine living ups and downs. But he was laid to rest, and his race was finished on this earth. So I appreciate the concern or the questions and all that, but I thought I'd share that this morning. And Connie, I appreciate how you tabled it last week. And I guess I just didn't feel it was the right time. But I thought before we get into the topic that I'd share that with our folks.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. You know, that's one of the reasons I enjoy doing this podcast with you so much is you're so honest and open and transparent. And I know you learned a lot of that from recovery, but a lot of people learn and grow and grieve and just process things from listening to our podcast. I'm flooded with DMs like that all the time. So I appreciate when we can be serious for a minute and not talk about silly grab ass stuff and talk about real life. And of course, thoughts and prayers with Karen and her whole family. And it sounds like he's in a much better place. And finally, no more pain, which is a great thing.
Amen. Amen. All right, pal.
Hang on now. We do
no.
One more piece of business we got to talk about.
Folks,
there's going to be some real pain coming sooner rather than later because my man Cody, from what I understand it, he's about to set a world record for Special Olympics gold medals. Is that right?
Well, I cannot believe. Yes, he is. He's in training.
Yeah, I saw that. His first day of training, he was doing it Rocky style. I saw it.
Buddy, he is so amped up. He's getting ready. But you know that he also appeared this past weekend.
Really?
Conrad, let me, as we're speaking, just hang on. I got to.
We're talking, of course, not about Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare, but Hendersonville's own Cody Angle, who is about to take some youngins to the woodshed in the Special Olympics.
Conrad, you do have your phone, don't you?
I do. Yes, sir.
So when you receive this, I want you to look at the top first. We had a show just up the road in Sycamore. It is an independent wrestling show this past weekend in Conrad. It is for a incredible cause that's very near and dear to my house, very near and dear to my heart. It's with two recovery groups. The Quentin Clark Foundation and Hustle Recovery. It's a man, Conrad, a Saturday night independent wrestling in Middle Tennessee with a packed gym. It don't get much better than that. I got to see my old boy Tony Falk in the house. His son LT was on the card, and just good wrestling, man. People came out, had a great time. I enjoyed it. Again, it raised money for a fantastic cause. Anything that has to do with recovery, I'm there. So I loved it and got involved. Somebody got him a guitar necklace. But Conrad, I won't be able to do this justice. So you'll know Troy Beasley is a part of the recovery group. He's also involved with professional wrestling. A good buddy of mine, Jason James with Pro Wrestling Entertainment, is the promoter of record. He put on the show. But Conrad, from this point forward, I'll kind of turn this over to you if you've got that text that I just sent you so you can kind of fill in the blanks. It was a huge night, monumental night. Yes, Cody Angle is in training for Special Olympics, but he's also preparing to the day he turns 18. So take it away, Connie. What do you see there?
Well, it's a packed arena, and Troy Beasley says, Cody Angle, thanks for the house. And then, of course, my man Codes responded underneath, you're welcome, Troy Beasley. May 4th, I'm going to get the whole arena sold out at Strawberry Slam. So May 4th, is that in Portland again?
That's in Portland again, pal. Yes, it is.
Portland, Tennessee. May the 4th be with you. I know Cody Angle will be there. And it sounds like they're going to be sold out, hanging from the rafters, as Ricky Morton used to say. And, you know, Cody Angle is an honorary member of the Rock and Roll Express. I have that on good authority.
Yeah. Well, so you'll know, Saturday night, there was a bunch of shenanigans and I mean, Tony the Casio, they screwed my man, Chris Michaels, out of the Pro Wrestling Entertainment Championship. And I just wasn't going to stand for it, Conrad. So I made my way down to the ring and took care of a little business. threw some of those good Memphis punches all over the ring. And then Conrad, there was a moment that I went, oh my gosh, I don't have my guitar. I don't have my guitar. But guess who came to the rescue and handed me the guitar between the ropes?
I love it.
Yes, sir. My man Code Dog was there on the scene. He capped it off, so he was involved in the main event, and that is why Mr. Troy had to give him a shout out on Facebook and thanked him for the house. How about that?
I love it. I love it. I'm really excited for Cody.
You're speechless.
Well, I mean, I just know that you've got. I'm really just sort of fascinated by how you keep all these balls in the air. You know, married to Karen, got some personal stuff going on. Cody's still wanting to make appearances. He's training for the Special Olympics. Oh, by the way, AEW's announcing new dates all the time. You're trying to, sidestep naming your faction with a really great name, it seems like, from some guy named Tom. I mean, there's just a lot of move. Oh, you own a baseball team. I mean, how do you do all this?
Would you stop it?
Well, I know how you do it. You keep yourself in peak physical condition because you know how to regulate your blood sugar.
Bingo.
And one of the things we're talking about today, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it, is Signos. And not everybody knows this, but in real life, my wife does medical clinical research. So we vet all of our sponsors here on the program. And when they sent this to the house, my wife opened the box thinking it was something for her. And she said, honey, this is a real medical device. I'm talking about a continuous glucose monitor. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, I don't need one of those. Well, let me give you a little pro tip here. The CDC estimates there are approximately 96 million Americans, more than 1 in 3, who have pre-diabetes. Now, of those with pre-diabetes, more than 80% don't even know they have it. Now, why does this matter? Well, foods that are high in carbohydrates raise your blood sugar more than any other foods. And during digestion, the pancreas produces insulin, which then binds the sugar in the blood and takes it into cells as a source of energy. Now, if you have pre-diabetes, the sugar begins to build up in your bloodstream rather than fuel the cells. And this is when insulin resistance occurs. And most people believe that's the number one cause of pre-diabetes. Signos is going to be a life hack for you. You see, a healthy weight allows insulin to work more efficiently and more effectively, and it can help you keep your blood sugars within a normal range. And a healthy diet and regular exercise are the best ways to bring your blood sugar back into a healthy range. But what Signos does, it gives you real-time data. We're talking about data directly from your body, and it allows you to create a weight loss plan unique to your specific lifestyle. You get this AI-driven app that gives you real glucose monitoring for your optimal health and weight management. With Signos, you'll actually be able to literally see which foods cause your blood sugar to spike above a reasonable level. You'll even get real-time alerts to do a little bit of exercise to get them to come back down. Now, I'm not saying in the middle of your day, you're going to go run track. I'm just saying maybe you walk and check the mail, and that's enough to get it back in a regular range. It doesn't have to be crazy, but a little short walk like that, man, it could really help. And on average, people are making like 227 different food choices a day. But with Signos, you'll learn the difference between stress eating and physical hunger. You'll be able to better manage your energy throughout the day. You'll even sleep better at night. I'm a big believer in this. My wife sold me on it when she was so impressed with the monitor. She started doing all the research. And man, it's been a real game changer. Little stuff like, hey, if you have a glass of wine with dinner, does that affect your blood sugar? That never even crossed my mind before Signos. Signos is going to help you make little tiny couple millimeter adjustments in your life to greatly improve the quality of your life. And in order for you to do that, you've got to have the data, right? In order to make a decision, to make a change, you need the information. Signos can communicate exactly what your body's doing. I'm such a big believer in this. I want you to try it. Signos has removed the guesswork of weight loss and provided us with the tools and knowledge we need to develop those better habits. It comes with real glucose data from the continuous glucose monitor and an AI-driven app, and deliver you real-time glucose insights for optimal health and weight management. Right now, Signos has an offer exclusively for our listeners. Go right now to Signos.com. That's Signos.com. You'll get up to 20% off select plans when you use our code MyWorld today. That's Signos.com and use the code MyWorld to get up to 20% off select plans for you today. Signos.com, and the code is MyWorld. So, Jeff,
Conrad,
What's going on here?
before we get into that, I just
All right.
look, I got to give not a little shout out. I'd scream into this microphone if I possibly could where Megan could hear it. I am so dadgum proud of her because, folks, if you hadn't seen it online, go to Hey, it's Conrad. Go to his social medias and see a picture of his beautiful bride. But she entered a contest, and Conrad won't brag on it because I get it, his wife, but she entered a contest. She didn't start on the independent scene. She didn't work up to the territories. She didn't go for the Mid-America title. She didn't go for the light junior heavyweight. She didn't go for any of these local yokels. She went straight to the big time out in Vegas and entered a Conrad have to help me, but it's a fitness competition.
Like a fitness competition. Yeah, yeah.
Competition. But anyhow, that is, I'll just say this, next level self-discipline, because you got to do it. It's consuming, not just what you eat, but there's training, there's sleeping, there's incredible balance. She's running a business. She's putting up with Conrad's ass, which is
That's a lot.
4/7. Yes. Anyhow, all kidding aside, Conrad, I want to really huge shout out. Congrats to Megan. I just, when I saw the picture and I knew somewhat, I didn't realize Karen knew as well she's training, but we both were just like, holy smokes. So anyway, and look, we all, maybe in our 20s, you don't talk about ladies' ages, but she's not in her 20s. I'll just say that. So that is another whole deal of self-discipline and really a mindset. So I respect the heck out of that. And so congrats, Megan. Congrats. Even though you got to put up with hardcore, you got to put up with anyway, congrats, Megan. Seriously.
Hey man, she worked really, really hard for a long, long time. And boy, she was on stage dehydrated, as you can imagine. And still even now, a few days later, chugging some Pedialyte, just trying to get normal again. But it was weird too, because even though, I spend every day with her, but she doesn't walk around spray tanned with a bunch of caked on makeup and costume jewelry and her hair real big. That's not who Megan is, as you know.
No.
And so to see that, it was like, what's going on here? But multiple coats of spray tan. And that's part of the gig. That's costuming in that world, I suppose. But
that's it.
Check her out. It's at Meegs Thompson, Meegs Thompson, over on Instagram. If you'd like to keep up with her fitness journey, because man, she's been hitting it hard, and I guess there's no plans to stop anytime soon, Jeff.
Good for her, man. Good for
total you. Nonstop arseholes is what we're all. I mean, total nonstop action is what we're all about here. Destination X 2009 went down on March 15th, 2009. So about 15 years ago. In Orlando at the Impact Zone, it is the 5th Destination X pay-per-view. Listen, you guys have, you had to name the pay-per-views just like WWE did. They had a Royal Rumble and they had a SummerSlam and they had a WrestleMania, and you guys had a Bound for Glory and a Genesis, et cetera, et cetera. What can you tell us that was a distinguishing thing about Destination X?
Well, that's one of those memories that I have that we dive into this that is often I have the fond memories, the good memories, and then sometimes I don't call it nightmarish because I'm grateful for all of it, because what a learning experience. There are no obstacles, they're just opportunities in life. But Conrad, when we Slammiversary was the first, I kind of thought through this reading the research a couple of weeks ago. I think Slammiversary, and then we, Stutter started with Bound for Glory and the Hogan on, Hogan off, and we finally got around to Bound for Glory, and that was a pay-per-view. But once we decided to go monthly, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, guys, we got to dive into, 12 names, and you had to get at least 90 days out. And that first exercise we did with the crew, Vince Russo, Dutch Mantell, Jeremy Borash, Bill Banks, it depended upon the revolving door of Mike Tenay. There was a pretty big group of us, if you will, and we would just kind of go through different names in iterations and time of year. and style of wrestling and just what's a good hook or marketing name. And it evolved through the years. And look, Dixie was, I don't have the exact recollection on how intricately involved she was, maybe in the first round of things, but as time went on, it became such a tax on the creative room because it felt like there for a time. And now the time we're talking about now is 2009. So at this point, we'd been doing monthly pay-per-views for a couple of years. And so, I've never really thought the name of a pay-per-view, I don't think it really ever mattered one buy or not. Now you could come up with a terrible name, and I think it may or may not, but it's all, the compelling content of that's why the viewer buys, and a marketing hook can help and enhance the look and the vibe. But when it came to Destination X, I can definitely remember we took a look back and said, look, we need to create, Genesis was at the beginning of the year and Final Resolutions was at December. And so those are kind of earmarks, time of year, if you will. Slammiversary was our yearly anniversary. And, we came to a point and said, hey, let's give an event that is going to maybe heavily feature the X division. And so it came pretty simple that there was, I guess you could say, double and triple entendre that, okay, Destination X leans into the X vision. And also we can talk about the specific date, March 19th, whatever the date was going to be. And so we just, went with that. And the graphics kind of changed through the years on what it looked like. But we all felt it was a powerful name for our brand once we landed on it.
I like the name, and I like the good news. Impact on February 12th did a 1.22 rating, which was 1.7 million viewers. This is 15 years ago, y'all. In 2009, that would have been the third largest audience ever for TNA at that point. And Meltzer was having a hard time figuring out what the hell happened, because he was saying that the shows were quote unquote poor shows with lousy angles, but the ratings were there. I mean, I guess that's sort of the attitude you have to have in business, right? Like, are you going to listen to the critics, or are you going to listen to the bottom line? Is that about right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's, the narrative that Dave, when I was living it week by week and month by month, I wasn't necessarily listening to the critics. I was looking at any metrics, most importantly, Spike, what do you think about it? Not what our ratings thought, because yes, that is at the top of the list, but also Spike knew not just trends, but I'm looking at Thursday night from 7 to 9, and that's my focus. Kevin K of the world, a network head, looks at seasons and demos and the competition on cable television and broadcast television. It's such a much wider scope. But yeah, we wanted to lean into ratings and buy rates. And specifically when it got into ratings, we would lean into that male 18 to 34, male 18 to 49. Why? Because we were on a men's network, and that is what their ad sales department really tried to focus on. We're going to get into some numbers today about the median age and the male demos. And at this time, we were really hitting on all cylinders. And this is today's episode is in a lot of ways the most successful run of ratings that the company ever had. And you just kind of look back on that time and look at creative and look at the build. And, we had kind of hit our groove because, we had been into the 2 hour, not just financially, but the viewer had got accustomed to the 2 hours by this time. I think we're a year in or something like that. So anyway, good numbers for sure, Connie.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the demo because it is big with men. 1.17 in males 35 to 49. That's an all-time record for you guys. 1.14 in males 50 plus, and 0.89 in males 18 to 34. It's also up. And Meltzer would say, I'm at a loss to the explanation, because when you're talking 50 plus, you're talking traditional wrestling fans. And I wanted to ask you what you thought of that statement, because I've heard for years, and I know we try not to talk about the current stuff a ton, but I've heard for years that the median age of a WWE viewer was in their 50s. And that really just kind of shocked me because as a kid, every kid I knew was watching wrestling, but their parents weren't. And I mean, my parents didn't watch. I mean, I guess they did when they were younger. But if I like argued and protested and demanded that we watched it just to shut my ass up, they'd let me watch it. But it wasn't like appointment television for them. And I'm curious, did you believe wrestling has always been that traditional wrestling fans are men 50 plus? Because I wouldn't have guessed that.
So, Conrad, I don't know that we have enough time, but I'm going to do my very best to try to. Let's do, and if you won't, let's lean into this, because the narrative you're hearing now, how long do you believe you've heard that? Over the last 3 to 5 years, or for 15, 20 years?
I can't answer that. You think it's more recent?
I do. And the reason being, in 2009, the younger demos didn't really, they certainly couldn't measure that there was, now Nielsen is getting into out of home and streaming numbers and all that. But older folks, and I know, look, I'm going to date myself, but calling it TiVo, but you can, that's the original machine that came out where you could watch stuff, record it and watch it later and all that. But I think as time has gone on, people have more leaned into that, the YouTube generation that watches clips and highlights and social media, following that on real time or a recap here and there. So I don't believe the wrestling audience has always been old, and I don't think they're old. I think wrestling has always hit. And I think that's a big part of why it's always and always will be on TV is that it hits every age demo. It just does. And me and baseball promoters, you get around a group of them, and certainly wrestling promoters. And when you look at kind of the successful times when the business gets hot, you have grandfathers come with grandkids. You have soccer moms come with 4 or 5 kids. You have a group of single dads come. You have, back in the territory days, when the territory days got red hot, and I mean, things were selling out. Eddie Marlin, I can remember him saying, whether it was the Fabs or the Rock and Roll Express or whatever team, you get, so the we'll call them the young girls, but he's really was saying teenage girls. You get teenage girls coming to watch the Fabulous Ones. Well, who follows the teenage girls? The teenage boys. And so then you get your youth in there, and then the ass kickers like a Lawler. That a full card done correctly, and your casting as broad and net as possible, you're going to get all demos done correctly. But when you don't lean into the niche, because I think professional wrestling's already a niche, it's not. I think we've grown by leaps and bounds over the last 20 years of getting into mainstream. But covering all the demos, covering all the bases, it's a broad audience. So I don't believe our audience, Conrad, is 50 plus men. That's kind of your question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I think it always has been very, very diverse.
Speaking of diverse, you guys are going to bring in Madison Rayne. She's going to become a television regular here for TNA. We know these days she's in AEW. What was your first impression of Madison Rayne? I know the knockouts, man, they were knocking out some big ratings for you guys.
Big time. And I can remember Vince and mainly Vince, but others in the creative room wanting to add to the beautiful people's, if you will. They wanted to, hey, let's get them a manager, let's get them a third. And I was like, do we need to go down that route just because they're a property that's clicking and working? And I saw both sides of it. And I'm not sure exactly how who brought Madison to the table, but when she was brought into the package, I could kind of see the vision that was going on, and I said, okay, it'll work. Because then the group became a little bit bigger and I don't say diverse, but it just kind of fit into the stick, if you will. A group of three was a notch up from just the tag team.
Well, we got some of the best storytelling that ever happened going on in this era. We're still in the main event mafia era. We get questions and comments about that all the time. The episode that set this big rating for you guys is Team 3D taking on Kurt Angle and Sting in the opener. Of course, Sting and Kurt Angle are both part of the main event mafia. And after the match, Angle is going to say that Sting's a phony and a hypocrite, and he was supposed to win the title at the pay-per-view. And Meltzer wondered, are we getting too inside baseball? The idea being, he references the disastrous WCW pay-per-view where Goldberg walked out and Shivani talked about how he was violating the script and then praised Steiner when he did the job for saving the match. Is this too inside baseball, or were you in favor of this? Because the fans all know, so why not just use that as part of the story?
I was, boy, if you could take us back to some of the creative rooms, Conrad, you'd probably get tickled. You would be amused, because I was vehemently against, I'll call it, revealing the magic trick, if you will, in creative and throwing it in people's faces. And whether I tried to use the Hollywood analogy or letting the sports analogy is, you don't tell the people, hey, I'm gonna run this play.
Yeah. Now for my next magic trick.
Any of that, or even in sports, you don't come to the offensive, come to the line of scrimmage and say, hey, I'm going deep down the middle to my two receiver. Get ready. Just leave some suspense, and that's why you watch it and get engaged. In this circumstance, and the argument was made was, hey, the main event mafia is a tight-knit group. And Sting and Kurt, and the story that we were telling was that in reality, Kurt was the ruthless mafioso leader, but Sting really wasn't going to be led by anybody by the stature of him being the icon in industry. And we played off that natural kind of rivalry within the group, and that is Kurt going into business for himself and saying, and we hypothetically went down the road, I can see Kurt telling the group, hey, Sting, lay down for me out there. And then he didn't do it. So I kind of put pause and I said, okay, I can kind of buy this psychology because Sting didn't lay down. He went against the leader of the group's request, if you will.
And here you come on screen saying, oh no, we're not going to have anybody laying down in my company. And of course, you yourself had been a part of that in WCW with Hulk Hogan. We've talked about that in the archives. Petey Williams is going to lose to Scott Steiner in a headdress on a pole match and finds himself out of the company. And I got to tell you, man, this was disappointing for me. Petey Williams was one of the highlights of my early TNA fandom. I'm not talking about in 02, but I'm saying when I started really paying attention again in 04, that Canadian Destroyer was a revolutionary move I don't think I've seen in my lifetime in wrestling. And now I love the stuff he did with Scott Steiner. And I guess if it has to come to an end, headdress on a pole is just as good of a way as any. But why is it Petey's time to go? Is it just a cost-cutting measure and we got to tighten the purse strings?
And look, that's another thing. Looking at this time frame, we were by far the most successful from a bottom line perspective. We were running more live events than we had ever run. We always ran them on a shoestring budget, so we were very profitable. I'm not talking about multiple zeros, but the money we spent, the return on investment was high. Merch was a big part of that. So we were making money on merch. We had taken the pay-per-views back in-house. Our ratings were good. Our licensing fee was the highest it had ever been. And as it worked into all of this, the investor wanted more and more and more of their money back. So we had tighter and tighter reins. When I look back on it, I think to myself times, and I did this years ago, if they would have kind of just loosened up a little more here and there, but I get it. Panda wanted their money back, and they were getting their money back at this time, and taking the share that they wanted to. So our reality was we had to keep our talent budget, tight. And as a part of that, just like we'll call it churn or the Jack Welch theory of GM, and we would look at our roster literally every month, maybe less tighter than that, and knowing that at this time we're getting pitched from all different kind of guys. And we Petey did nothing wrong, and others that got let go at this time did nothing wrong. We were just turning over talent, and he was a casualty of that, if you will. But he did nothing wrong, and others at this time didn't either. It was just churn.
Well, one of the other victims who wound up losing their job here is Jimmy Rave. I know Vince Russo was a big proponent of him. I was a big fan of Jimmy Rave, loved his stuff in Ring of Honor, and certainly saw him in some indies. Another talent in wrestling gone just way, way too soon.
Jeez.
Midway is also going to be gone too soon. They're going to go bankrupt here. And apparently, according to some reports, they owed you guys like over $160,000 in video game royalties. Was this a major scuttlebutt behind the scenes when the Midway deal went belly up?
We obviously knew there was a possibility this was not shocking news whatsoever. And when it happened, unfortunate, but in my personal experience, we're in Nashville. Panda and their attorneys and the original deal, we'll do legal and finance. In the business side of Jeff, you do creative and wrestling. Those rules absolutely came into play, and I knew that Panda was going to get every penny that they possibly could. And shoot, Conrad, you've been around this kind of stuff. You kind of got to get in line, and I know that we got some. And I remember fast forward years later. They were not on, we got what we could, but it was never a major, oh my God, I can't believe we're not going to get this money. We kind of had the heads up for months and months and months, and we got to pay down on some of that.
There's lots of discussion in the newsletters about, hey, if there's real cost cutting going on, who else is leaving? They say Christian Cage and Kevin Nash are obviously prime candidates to be leaving, but there's other people like Monty Brown, who they think is going to stick around. James Storm has said he's committed. If Robert Roode were to leave, it would be as a single. And Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin may be looking for international work. And as we're recording this, what's old is new again, I guess. Because I hear that there was a going away party thrown for Shelley and Sabin at the most recent TNA pay-per-view or TNA tapings. What do you expect for the Motor City Machine Guns in 2024? Any chance we see them on a Wednesday night, you think?
Never say never. That's for damn sure. Those guys, man, oh man, when they were put together as a team, they just clicked and clicked and clicked, and pretty happy for them. 15 years later, they were still rocking and rolling in TNA. So their talent, the cream always rises to the top. They're going to land. It's going to be pretty exciting on where they do land. They've been together long enough. I can see them having, a successful, we'll call it a independent wrestling tour for 12 months or so. But yeah, there's a lot of upside in those guys. Tremendous amount.
Let's talk a little bit about some other moving and shaking. Kazarian is in this era, is out with surgery. So Christopher Daniels is going to move into a suicide role, not an actual act. I'm saying the character for the video game. And I wanted to mention this from the Torch because, Lord, the Torch has had their share of phone calls about you over the years. A lot from your dad and a lot from other people. And here's what's written in March of 2009. There's growing resentment of Jeff Jarrett within the company. He's had his share of defenders, particularly among the people he hired or had a hand in getting hired. The locker room is frustrated with the booking. But the bigger story is there's a split amongst the TNA office staff. Those who were part of Panda Energy and don't have ties to Jarrett are growing skeptical of his performance. Dixie Carter, though, remains loyal to Jarrett. She questions creative decisions behind the scenes and has butted heads with him at times, but she is quick to shoot down or ignore negative comments regarding Jarrett or the performance of the creative team. The feeling is that if there are any management changes made soon, creative would be spared and others in the chain of command would play the role of sacrificial lamb. Man, that reads like there's a handful of people in particular who may be on the phone there. When you hear that, how does that strike you? Who do you think is dialing old Wade?
In 2024 or in
What do you think then, and what do you think now?
well, in 2009, I wasn't dialed into it. And if I would have heard that, like sometimes during creative meetings when there's a pause in discussion or we're taking a coffee break or lunch break or a snack break or whatever it was, you'd kind of hear kind of stuff. I would just like, yep, the ratings are the most successful. The bottom lines are most successful this company's ever been. Makes a lot of sense. That would be one thought. Then the other thought would go down my mind. I'll call it the Jerry Lawler, Jerry Jarrett school of mindsets in professional wrestling. When the territory's down, everybody gets along. When the territory's up, everybody's going to be knocking each other because they want to take all the credit and blah, 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 blah. And that definitely came through my mind. And by 2009, if I would have sat down and read that, Conrad, I would have not believed the narrative that Wade tried to spill about Dixie at all. And I know that the conversations that were going on, Kurt was involved with them, Vince Russo was involved with them, and I'm saying with Dixie, that, look, it goes back to you could just, and look, Dutch was one that was very perceptive of all of it. And, you know, as it relates to talent, there's guys that they wanted more bookings. They wanted to take more credit for the success. They wanted to crawl to the top. They wanted more money. That comes with the territory. It was, you know, I told myself, oh God, millions of times, hey man, I signed up for this. But sometimes it would just be an incredible nuisance that, why do they got to create this chatter? And Conrad, you may be thinking, well, did you mention your dad in there? I feel certain he could have been a part of those conversations as well, because there was just a time that it was in vogue, as ironic as it may be. Hey, let's bitch about something. And they did. And to Wade and Dave and any other journalist, good news doesn't sell. Divisive, critical, opinionated, pushing the buttons, that gets clicks or sells newsletters. And that's what their job was to do, because they had bills to pay and they wanted profit. So that was kind of the mindset I had on it, all of it.
Hey, help me understand the decision to do the DVD, because in the middle of all this criticism you're getting, they're putting out a 4-disc set of your career, and they describe you on the DVD. It stops for no one and casts an entire wake on the sea of history, but throughout the ages, a chosen few have left indelible footprints on the tapestry of time, forged a new path of their own creation. Jeff Jarrett, the king of the mountain, is one such individual. Jeff Jarrett weathered the tempest of adversity and is now poised to take TNA wrestling to the brim of wrestling's brave new horizon. Join us now as we chart the course of this amazing man and his ascension to the peak of wrestling history. Jeff, like, if I asked you to put yourself over, you wouldn't say no shit like that.
No.
I just wonder from an optics standpoint, when you're getting all this criticism and then this is coming out, it's like, whew, I don't know, man. The optics of that are
so the DVD business was very lucrative.
yes.
Not TNA, but to Ring of Honor and tape trading and DVD business, not tape trade, DVD business. I'd say it kind of peaked in the 06, 07, 08, 09, 010. Would you say, Conrad? Roughly in that time. Because, yeah. But anyway, our DVD business was super lucrative. And not once, but twice, I shot down ideas of, hey, let's do a best of Jeff Jarrett. Let's do that. And I said, just what you said, Conrad. I said, we can sell DVDs the other way. There's 1,000 other titles. Do another AJ Styles volume 2. Do a Kurt Angle. Do the best of Main Event Mafia. I mean, there were so many working titles we had. But then Don West is the one who came and said, we can sell these a lot broader than you think. But if you don't want to do one, let's come up with something. I said, hey, man, let's blow it out. Let's go back. Let's get archive footage. Let's do this. He said, okay. And so it was Don West. And I'm not going to say Don wrote the copy. I guarantee he contributed. Our man, Kevin Sullivan, could have written that. Maybe Zahadi, maybe some folks in marketing, maybe some folks at the DVD. My gut tells me that's a Don West, because Don's a super salesman and could care less about the politics or the optics. He's about, I'm going to sell this DVD. And he did. Around this time, he came up with a couple of different t-shirt designs. We were already selling, I think, guitars at this point. Yeah, we definitely were. But he wanted to lean into it. And so they weren't worried about the nonsense, if you will, the over the top. But shit, you met Don. You saw him at StarCast 1. You think he embellished a couple of things when he was clearing house the last day of us? I mean, that was his style to really just completely go over the top. So if you want to get mad at somebody, get mad at D-Dub on that.
I'm not mad. I'm not. I just found it hilarious. It feels like it's written by AI.
It's so, I guess you could say, ludicrously. Is that a word? Ludicrously?
I would love to see you say, just, boy, I weathered the tempest of adversity, and now I'm poised to take TNA wrestling to the brim of wrestling's brave new horizon. What?
Hey, get it with a good a VO guy.
I just don't. I know what you're talking about. I get that. They do the movie theater voice in a world where there are too many one-piece guitars.
It sold somehow. It did.
I have no doubt. But to me, it's just like, hey, want to see some dudes get their dome caved in with some guitars? Here you go. It's the best of Jeff Jarrett.
Hey, you know, on that, they dug up a Memphis match with me and Cactus Jack.
Okay.
It gave some we did some pretty cool Easter eggs as far as like bonus content, some Memphis stuff, a couple of videos, I think, with me and Tojo and Akio Sato. I don't recall, but they also they came out to the house and did, God almighty, that was like, I don't know. I'll probably embellish, but it felt like a 3 or 4 hour interview. It's long. It's kind of long because they wanted to use sound bites all the way through it. So, and look, Don West was like, all right, what I want to do is I want to up the price and da-da-da. We've never done one. Don always thought through, bottom line, what am I going to get the ROI? And so if I can have these selling points, never before seen footage, the most extensive one-on-one interview in the history of the King of the Mountain, you're going to get this, you're going to get that, you're going to get this, you're going to get that. By the end of Don's sales pitch, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm getting this for next to nothing. Oh, but really, they doubled the price. That's Don. But I mean, he really thought through value-added content. He was a master at that, because at the end of the day, his deals were really, really good.
Oh, yeah. He believed in bringing value. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And you guys over-delivered with value. February 19th, 2009, there's an empty arena match between Kurt Angle and Sting. maybe one of the forgotten empty arena matches because nobody talks about it these days, but it was the all-time most watched TNA show up to that point. This empty arena match with Sting and Kurt Angle drew a 1.45 rating, which meant 2.1 million viewers. This is unbelievable. Were you shocked to see that the empty arena match worked this well?
The number we were rolling, the story was there. I definitely can't say I was shocked. I was very happy and very elated, but a lot of thought went into all of this. The setup, the build, the setup, but probably most importantly, and this is what I think and look, folks, if you're into unique kind of matches, certainly if you've seen the Lawler Funk empty arena, WWE's done some different things through the years, and sometimes when you fight backstage, you go into a bowler room or different things. On this, Conrad, the Impact Zone was a real positive for us to do it in this setting. And here's why. So, we produced TV down there. We did that. And when we left this till the end of the night. I'm pretty sure we left this to the end of the night. And so we legitimately, these fans got to watch, I don't know, 2.5, 3 hours, whatever it was. They got to see the taping, and then we announced it and whatever it may be. So Conrad, the folks that were in the Impact Zone literally went right outside the studio, but outside in the queue lines, the lines to wait all around. I think there was 2 entrances about there, Conrad. We had big video screens.
Okay.
So they could watch, the people who had just watched inside could watch outside. And we mic'd the people outside, the audience. And this will sound self-serving, but I can remember Dutch coming up to me saying, "Dude, what a call you made. What a call you made." I said, well, if we wouldn't have sat in that room and really thought through all this, wouldn't that? Because our concern was the emotion of it. Just the vibe and the emotion and everything that went with it. And look, at the very top of it, I've said it many, many times on here when we have TNA podcast, a dialed in, ruthless, badass, heel Kurt Angle is a phenomenal performer. I mean, good God Almighty, so good. And Sting rose to the occasion as usual. And so they had a fight, a kick-ass brawl, thought through like Kurt always did. So the execution of it all with performers, well, obviously the setup, but the performers, the production, the truck, the audience members outside, the way it was mic'd, the way it was thought through, the way it was executed across the board, it was very, very, very compelling. Because if you go back and watch, Conrad, if I remember correctly, going into maybe break 6, we actually announced and showed the announcement and showed people leaving that you've got to leave the building for this match to take place. And we had shots of people coming down the bleachers and leaving and all this. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know we were capturing all kind of content. I don't specifically remember what aired, but the viewer was brought through the thread the entire way, and then we paid it off. So love it when a plan comes all together, I guess is the short answer. But it came through, and of course Spike was elated, because they knew we leaned into a different kind of vibe and storytelling, and it was just good TV.
It was great TV, and it kept people glued. The next week, you guys did a 1.29, and that means 1.7 million viewers. I mean, you're on an incredible run here, and we've got our main event, I suppose, for Destination X. It's going to be Sting versus Angle with Mick Foley as the special guest referee, or he's the special enforcer rather, and you're the special guest referee. So we really load this up. Why did you like the idea of having both you and Foley be a part of this main event and make it? I know you're not wrestling, but you're performing. It's a 4-man performance at that point with 4 big time stars.
The dynamic of the Main Event Mafia, I thought, was so well defined that the struggle, and to back up for maybe if folks are diving into this episode and hadn't really heard the build up, the Main Event Mafia was 5 guys: Kurt Angle, Sting, Booker, Scott Steiner, Kevin Nash, all former world heavyweight champions.
Yeah.
And they were battling the front line, the mainstays. I don't want to call them the young guys, because at this point, AJ had been around 7 years, and James Storm and Bobby Roode and Christopher Daniels. But anyway, Eric Young and others. But so that was kind of the dividing line, and me and Mick stayed in the middle. I was the quote unquote founder that was my role. Yes, it was legit, but I was the founder of the company. But that's where I was a business head, somewhat of authority figure, but I was also a we'll call it a former wrestler or a part-time wrestler or a wrestler. So still that. And Mick was too, but Mick, his platform when he came into TNA was he wanted to help the young guys and do this and do that. And his in-ring days or full-time in-ring days were behind him. But we were both kind of in a quandary with mixed emotions that we knew we needed the Main Event Mafia to be successful. Just the stories, and that's how we told it. And obviously the people were compelled and really into this. And so we thought we could tell the story better with me being a ref and Mick out there, and knowing that Nash and Booker and Steiner loomed. And you also had, okay, where are the AJ Styles and Daniels, and, how are they going to factor into it? Booker and AJ had their deal going on. And it was just, I think it checked all the boxes week in and week out. And, when I look at those numbers, and this is something that I tried to do a quick search on and couldn't really find it. We're on Spike, certainly not a top 5, not even a top 10 network. No disrespect. I think we're top 25 network. So the network average of Spike was definitely not 1.7 or 1.9 million viewers. So we were exponentially higher. They were very, very successful numbers.
Let's talk about some other moving and shaking. We know that Gail Kim and Christian are going to WWE. James Storm and Robert Roode are going to re-up. It seems like it's all good news all the way around, except for Sanjay Dutt. He's going to get let go. His contract is expiring. You're not coming to terms on a new deal. And it's written in the Observer, with the exception of yourself, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, and James Storm, he was probably the longest reigning wrestler on the roster. I mean, at this point, he'd been there for more than 5 years. And I know these days, you and Sanjay are thick as thieves for AEW. There's old do-rag Sanjay doing his thing. If you're watching with us over on YouTube, that's my world on youtube.com. But what's up with Sanjay, man? You're not looking out for our boy?
You know what? When I started to tell the story when we were talking about name and pay-per-views. And then I started a few minutes ago to tell the story about Petey Williams. But every pay-per-view, every creative session, at this kind of rhythm of TNA, we would tape every other Monday and Tuesday. And then pay-per-view weekends would be every other Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We had those off weeks as far as being on the road, but we would, for creative purposes, we would start Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. at my house and go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The guys that were flying out, maybe a Tenay, maybe a Russo at this time. I don't think anybody else was. We would try to wrap by 3 o'clock on Thursday. And then for a while, they just said, forget it. We'll start flying out on Fridays. So it was really 3 days of creative of, 10, 12, 14-hour day. I mean, they they were full days completely, but we would break for lunch and certainly break for dinner, but we tried to wrap up around 6 if we could. If you'd kind of get tired and weary. But when we would get in those rooms, Conrad, we would have our 3 whiteboards, and you would have the pay-per-view board, and you certainly had the next 3 months of pay-per-views. And sometimes we had footnotes on pay-per-view 4, 5, or 6 on where we were going. Then you would have your other 2 boards of the television shows and the segments. And, it was laid out there for us to kind of constantly think on that. But before we ever got into the boards, we would have to do house cleaning. And our man, Dan the Man Engler, Rudy Charles, the incredible, I don't even want to call him assistant. He kind of kept the train on the tracks. But we would have to, and sometimes Dixie would relay information through him. Other times it was through others, but we would, we need pay-per-view names. We need, and we would get a mandate. All right, we've got to cut, we got to cut our budget, got to cut our roster. You probably need to let 2 guys go, 3 guys go. And so here we go again, looking at it. So they were all decisions made by the group of, all right, who's going to be let go. And, I think you referenced Christian had been gone at this time and Gail had been gone at this time, but kind of across the board. And you kind of, when you looked at dates, how many dates did they work last year? So that talent is going to want to work at least that many dates, if not more, the next year. And when you start kind of doing the math, you go, okay, this is unfortunately who's on the block. Nothing that they did wrong. I mean, Jimmy Rave, same set as all those guys. They really didn't do anything wrong. It was just time to move and churn. Again, churn. Conrad, did you ever read Jack Welch's book on the GM dude?
It's unbelievable. I recommend that everybody in business take a look.
Good. Can you give people that are listening to this, because the little nuggets on how he managed people to this day?
He got the bottom 10% every year, just the lowest performing 10% going the end. And he wasn't big on innovation. He was big on imitation. He would say, if you take a look at other successful businesses and you adopt their best practices, eventually you yourself become one of the best businesses because you've adopted everybody else's best practices. So one of the best practices I've learned from my man Sanjay, if we can take a look at that photo again. If you're looking at Sanjay right there and you see he's got those eyes squinted at you, that's because you got too much dick hair, son. This episode is brought to you by the spring cleaning champions, Manscaped. This season, make sure you groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Make Sanjay proud. Clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like the springtime flowers. Embrace the season and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this special offer. Go to manscaped.com, use the code MyWorld. You'll get 20% off and free shipping. After using Manscaped, I can finally say I've caught the spring fever. Introducing the season's champs, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. It also features dual LED spotlights to guide you through the darkest winter debris. Navigate with confidence in your delicate areas. Hate making a mess? Don't worry. This bad boy is waterproof. Shave in the shower, in the bath, or in the ocean. Maybe that's why Sanjay was wearing a do-rag. Maybe he just cleaned up down yonder. I love this thing. It comes in a compact case. I take it with me everywhere I go, and you're going to love it too. It's not just for the nether regions over at manscaped.com. If you're rocking a beard, they can hook you up. They got the Beard Hedger Pro Kit and the Handyman Electric Face Shaver. You can craft up that signature look or just clean up the neckline. But why not get 20% off and free shipping with our code MyWorld at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code MyWorld at manscaped.com. Nothing like a little spring cleaning in your pants. I want to also mention that we got to talk about the finances of the company, because Meltzer would write, while not a public company, TNA revenues increased tremendously over the past year, largely due to huge increases in merchandise sales, running a regular score of arena events, and more revenue from Spike due to it being the first full year with the show being 2 hours. TNA would appear to be more recession-proof than WWE because of a high percentage of their revenue is fixed from Spike and less from overseas, where declining currency has taken a toll. Timeout. Now, that's Dave Meltzer saying that TNA is more recession-proof. Now, he wrote that in 2009. But didn't my man just a handful of weeks ago say it was never profitable and lost money all the freaking time? Like, what's up with that? How can that be? How can they be more recession-proof than WWE and increase tremendously, huge increases in merch sales and more revenue than ever because of Spike? What? Perhaps, maybe somebody forgot. Maybe. The Observer would continue. Still, the company is not immune from recent cost cutting, nor is almost any business at this point running less pay-per-view events on the road. Let's time out right there. I just want to give everybody a reminder of where the world was in 2009. We are just inside of a calendar year from the housing collapse here in America. And that brought around a lot of other pain in the economy, where we got stimulus packages like cash for clunkers. So if you had an old beat up turd of a car, you could get a big incentive on it if you go buy a new car. And there were all these different projects and initiatives and changes happening in the economy because the economy was on its ass here in America. So that's the reason Meltzer gave that qualifier. Nor is almost any business at this point in regard to being immune from cost cutting. He would continue. Running less pay-per-view events on the road, even though it is readily acknowledged the company looks more major league doing pay-per-views from arenas with larger crowds than from the impact zone. But evidently, not being able to draw well at the pay-per-view sites makes it more cost-effective in most cases to run Orlando. They also cut back on giving the Monday off after road pay-per-view shows, at least the last time, to save a day of costs. The cutbacks haven't been close to as severe as WWE. Now, wait a damn minute.
Get him fired up. Come on now.
Now, hang on now. I thought WWE was the most profitable company of all time, and TNA never made money. And now you're saying that the cost cutting is more severe in WWE than it is here. And that, in fact, TNA might be more recession-proof. Huh? I do enjoy the idea that there's this revelation. You probably knew this all along. I understand from a look and feel perspective and the optics, running other arenas looks bigger, looks more major league. But at what costs? It costs too much is the reality. And if you're running a small business, you don't opt for that. And I know we don't talk about current stuff, but you and I both know there's a lot of tribalism that exists in wrestling today in 2024. And man, there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks out there who say, well, AEW shouldn't be running such big arenas. They should run smaller arenas. Here's the reality. Running an arena is running an arena. And I understand that there are rental costs that are different, but the major expense is just going on the road, period. If you really want a true alternative, a cost-cutting measure, then you just go to a soundstage and you do it every week. Like, oh, I don't know, everyone else in wrestling history has done, right?
Yes. Bingo. Yes. What did you ask me a question? Because I don't want to miss it. Because the thing that go ahead. Did you ask me a question?
No, I didn't ask you a question. I just wanted to point out, because I know you and I have traded text messages about this narrative that TNA never made money, and it's just not true. You were making money as soon as you got that. When you got 1 hour, it was great. But when you got the second hour, you've said it loud and proud on this show, you guys were made men. Now, that means there's a certain amount of top line revenue that you know is coming in. I don't mean to beat people over the head with this, but I understand there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily entrepreneurs and they've ever had to run a business or run a P&L. But said differently, let me say this. It's almost impossible to lose money if you know how much money you're going to make right up front. The idea is spend less, and then there's more profit. The end. Now, this opportunity exists because you're getting a rights fee from Spike, and you're getting 2 hours guaranteed. And so, you know, if the bulk of my money coming in is from this show, and it's this amount of money, spend less and you'll make more. That's it, right?
And here's what, man, you got fired up, which kind of got me fired up because the whole narrative is just completely ridiculous. But we made a calculated decision. Let's try a few pay-per-views on the road.
Right.
Okay. We did. And then they wanted to try a few more because there was an internal discussion. Hey, it does look better. It is growing the brand. There was probably somebody on a mid-level at Spike that would say, hey, that looks really good, this and that. Well, there came a time when, I'm going to go back to Panda, Dallas, Bob Carter at the very top of that food chain that took the hard look, and they were much more in tune with WWE numbers than I ever was during this time frame. And you got to remember, Conrad, March of 2009, and you know, I just had a lunch meeting with a local businessman, Conrad, and he is from my community for years and years and years. I mean, he went to a sister high school and all this kind of stuff, and he started referencing 08 and 09. And Conrad, my eyes glazed over because during 08 and 09, I'll just say, yes, it's common knowledge within my inner circle. I was running hard both ways, family, partying, and business. It was where my life was at. So the outside world of the housing collapse and all of that stuff, I was numb to. Knowing knowing the WWE numbers on a peripheral just because of the competition, but really digging into their live event business and looking at it, and Panda having comparables on as much as we could gather. And then, of course, we looked at pay-per-view year over year. Okay, this year we're in South Carolina, we're in Dallas, wherever we took our show on the road. And so you take a P&L from that event and then take one from the Impact Zone. Conrad, I mean, when I tell you it's not even remotely close, it's not even remotely close because it did not increase buys. And there were some shows, I'm sure I don't have any specifics, that the buys may be a little down. So not only did it not affect the buys, it just massively threw our expenses way up because of the fixed cost of the studio. So it was, and when we compared it to what WWE was doing on their pay-per-views, TVs, and then non-televised, they would break it out. It became very clear that's just a vanity project to go pursue putting something on the road in you know, a one-off here and there. And I think we always said, hey, let's try to do Slammiversary and Bound for Glory every year on the road, and maybe just Bound for Glory. But we knew the brand wasn't ready for that. And to kind of get into modern day stuff, you can look at as red hot as the WWE live event business is, and I'm not talking about non-television. I'm talking about Raws and SmackDowns. They're killing it, and the pay-per-views obviously are killing it. They're non-televised. They're not selling out every night. Are they rocking and rolling? Yes, all this, but the business in their world right now is at a peak. You look at us at AEW, Toronto last week, Coca-Cola Coliseum. It's, you know, you got Raptors in one building, and it's that market and everything. But I could not have been happier for Adam and Jay, Edge and Christian. I shouldn't say Edge. Anyway, Adam Copeland and Christian in their hometown. I Quit match, but the building was sold out. So, you know, it just kind of goes into, yeah, what you said, Conrad, the very basics of our industry. In 2009, it was a much better decision to take our pay-per-views in-house because it made our profits much, much more.
I mean, listen, in business, that's what it's all about. Like, you're trying to spend less and net more. I mean, that's it. Yes, we're worried about top line gross, but if we're losing it all because of overhead, what does that matter?
Dumb.
You know, like when people brag about, oh, we had $1 million gate. Okay, what were the expenses? What were the hard costs? Like, you know, you file taxes on the net. You don't file taxes on the gross.
Hey, Wow, that's a wise man. You file taxes on the net, pal.
I mean, that's what you're paying.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
like, who gives a shit what you had? You ain't got it now. Show me. Show me.
That's a good little
Let's talk a little bit about where you are in your race with ECW. I know what you're thinking. Wait, ECW went down? Yeah. But WWECW is here, and former TNA headliner Christian Cage is now on that show. And believe it or not, they're getting 1.74 million viewers on a Tuesday through the first 8 episodes of 2009. Meanwhile, you guys are averaging 1.65. I recognize that this is the third show, sort of like NXT is these days, but still, that's got to make you feel pretty pleased with yourself, man. You're at least competitive in one area with WWE.
You know what? The question, you may or may not be surprised by this, but I used to ask folks that, and I would watch it on my off Mondays, but other Mondays we'd be down there, and I would ask them because I don't want to say there was a time that on Raw you go, okay, what are they promoting for tomorrow night? For tomorrow night? For tomorrow night? And I was just like, yep, they're going to load that bad boy up because there was a natural. I don't want to call it a rivalry. Of course, you want to start doing if there's a barometer and people talk about it. Oh man, we're almost this, almost that. But and yes, it's their third show, but the Monday Night Raw plugs for ECW were always curious for me. Like, okay, what are they going to shove over there?
You guys have had some great success in ratings. So after that February 19th episode, Dixie actually puts out a press release, sort of an open letter to wrestling fans, reflecting on the journey of TNA, saying, hey, we've been around for 7 years and we're the little company who no one gave a chance, but we've grown by leaps and bounds because of you, our fans, and we're going to continue to work hard to earn your support. On Impact on March 5th, you get 1.9 million viewers. That makes it the second highest rated show ever, just behind the empty arena match for Sting and Angle. Yeah, the show ends with Angle in the ring challenging you to come out.
Hey, let me ask you real quick. What's the median age?
Oh, yeah. 0.89 in males 18 to 34, 1.35 in males 35 to 49.
Does it give a median age of the audience?
No.
Okay. In some of the research on that, there was one median age of 37, which is, here's where I'm going with that. I was going to bring that up. And I'm like,
the following week on the 12th, that was 37. Since we're talking about ratings, we'll say the next week, you guys on the 12th, you did a 1.18 and a 1.7 million. That's a 1.7 million total. So it's 70% male viewership. Average viewer's age was 37. That's on March 12th.
So back to our discussion about males 50 plus, a 37 median age with a good demo, super valuable to the network. I guess what I'm saying. That's why when you look at, well, heck, this is kind of talking across the competitors, if you will. But no, when you look at I'll call it the UFC WWE dynamic. And I know, Conrad, we text back and forth on business deals and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at the UFC sponsorship Rolodex, I guess if you could say, it's massive, and they have been doing it for years. And yes, the old guard didn't want it on the mat and all that, but just their median age. So when we were doing 37, I can remember weeks, Conrad, when we would do a median age of a 42 or 43 or 44, that I'll just say Dixie and others would like, oh my God, that's too high. What are we doing? We got to get kids back. And I'm thinking, when you're in the early 40s, late 30s, no, you're not 32, 34, but you're still in a very, very valuable demo. And that's where advertisers will flock to, because you can sell a multitude of products at a premium. And that was something that Kevin K he just, running the network. He knew there's a real value to that. So median age, watching a rerun of CSI or whatever it may be, that median age would go up and the demo rating would go down.
Let's talk about Jenna from Survivor Amazon. back in 2003. She signed a contract with you guys. She's going to do a vignette with Mick Foley. She's 28. She was a swimsuit model before she did Survivor. She parlayed the success on Survivor into a Playboy cover. Allegedly, she got $1 million payoff for that, and of course, she won the $1 million for winning the game show Survivor. Well, I mean, I know you're courting attention, and I know that's probably Dixie's lane, but if I'm Sanjay Dutt,
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell, Jeff? I've been here 5 years, man.
Or Petey Williams or Jimmy.
Yeah, I created the hottest move your company ever had, but we're gonna give a check to the Survivor girl, lady. I don't mean that ugly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But then that was obviously you're kind of voicing those opinions. It was rampant, and it was something that there was always kind of that discussion. Survivor, yes, it's a CBS/Paramount product, but she just didn't hit our demo, if you will. And yes, okay, if she's not hitting our demo, we want to go outside it. Yeah, she's what you said, swimsuit model and Survivor and all that. But bringing value to the product, that was always the question that I'll just say the creative room would say, okay, can, and I'm not saying actually wrestle a match, but that's where we're heading. What can she do? What's her offense? What's her defense? Well, let me back up. Will she physically get involved? Can she cut a promo? Those are the first two questions. And bless her heart, Connie, no to both.
Bless your heart. That's the real thing. Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Dutch Mantell. It's in the torch that he's not been contributing as much to creative lately. He's been working as an agent on most of the shows, spending a lot of time with the knockouts. And it's even written here. Mantell was laughed at by colleagues when he suggested months ago that the main event mafia would get over stronger if they had their own flag they carried to the ring with them. I don't know what's so funny about that. Do you remember that?
I don't remember this. And that is a narrative, like we've already talked about, that somebody, Dutch, and it's not surprisingly because he didn't give a damn. Who was I just chuckling with the other day about him? But Dutch obviously rubbed somebody the wrong way. But him not being involved, that's all complete nonsense. At the very least, and this is something that I'll say this. I learned this probably more from, well, my dad or Lawler, either one, even a Bill Dundee who booked a lot. Dutch certainly is, hey man, get some eyes get other eyes on this. They're going to kind of see something. So I don't think there was a show that I didn't at least say, hey man, any feedback? And look, it's up to me to decipher it. I think that's kind of what it is. I think it's a very strong trait of a leader is to engage team members to take criticism and feedback, and then it's up to you. The ball was in my court. The responsibility rested on my shoulders, but nonsense of him not being involved. It's silly.
We got to talk about this little nugget from the torch. Jeff Jarrett is a stickler for coming up with reasons why the television cameras are present during backstage segments, which is why you always see Jeremy Borash or Lauren holding the microphone in scenes they sometimes don't fit in. Others, including Dutch, a Jarrett loyalist, have tried to talk him out of creating reasons for the cameras to be present, but he hasn't budged so far. I wanted to bring this up because I remember when AEW first became a thing, that was a big conversation about things that AEW would never do. You know, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. We're going to have stipulations. It won't be something where we pay something off and then a month later we pretend like it didn't happen. And they also said, we're not going to insult the audience's intelligence and let you think the guys are carrying on a private conversation, but you just happen to be privy to everything they're saying with a freaking camera right there. But that was common in WWE. So if you're going to watch WWE, you had to sort of suspend your disbelief for your entire WWE and for that matter, WCW fandom. Clearly somebody here was saying we shouldn't be doing this. And I'm curious where the pushback on that came from, because we know Russo did it extensively. Chat me up.
That was this was I was a stickler for it. And I thought, as a brand, 6-sided ring, 4 different divisions, but we'll call it sports presentation. But sometimes that irritated and aggravated folks in the creative room. Like, well, what do you mean by this? They can have an arrival shot. I'm like, yes. And they know it's being shot. But when you get into dialogue, and I hate to use that word, but that is an accurate word, that when you get into dialogue and you're having a conversation and you don't acknowledge the camera and you're talking, it just becomes to me, it's a different feel of a product. And I think it's a subconscious type deal. And, there's certain movie scenes through the years. The first one I ever remember seeing that I chuckled at is Burt Reynolds in Smokey and the Bandit, where he looked directly into the camera and kind of winked and went on. And look, I'm still 40 years later, I'm still talking about this. But as a product, I was a very much a stickler on that, in that, look, I don't have to have the announcer say anything, but I want them there because they're on the scene reporting. Boy, oh boy, Vince hated that I had that mindset, and a lot of the people in the room. And then Dutch began to, it really was like, well, Jeff, do you really? And like, yes, we'll figure a way. But that was kind of my mindset, again, to differentiate us from the WWE is a part of that decision, but I also thought it just made for better content. Because again, I'm going to give it into the more realism or sports vibe branded product.
Let's talk a little bit about where the buys are. We're finally here at the pay-per-view. Destination X, March 15th, 2009. Last year's Destination X, 2008, did 20,000 buys. Last month's pay-per-view, Against All Odds, did 20,000 buys. But we've just set not one, but 2 ratings records in between those pay-per-views. So this one does 30,000. You're up 50% in 30 days, Jeff. The main Event Mafia was clicking, right?
It was. And, doing the simple math, $40 product, 20 goes to us, roughly 20 times 10. What is that? 200,000, 200 extra $1,000 this month. Had we have run it on the road, there goes your profit. Your majority, the difference in. So, we were up again. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but I can't do it that quick in my math. The percentage of our revenue, or did Dave say that? What were we at? 70, 80% of rights fees guaranteed. So it wasn't a make or break every month.
Right.
2 hours on pay-per-view. Again, you've heard me say this. Are we going to win the ratings or not war? Are we going to win who's going to win the war internally? The ratings or the buy rates? And more we leaned into the ratings.
This pay-per-view was a financial success for sure, but maybe not a critical success. The readers of the Wrestling Observer gave it 13.2% thumbs up, 14.2% thumbs in the middle, and an overwhelming 72.6% thumbs down.
Conrad, how many total votes?
Boy, I'm glad you asked that. 106.
Okay. Really?
106.
Mercy. So you're much better with numbers. 100 is what percentage of 30,000?
Tiny.
Okay. Thank you. That's Alabama math for you right there. Tiny.
Yeah, tiny. Speaking of tiny, if you want something that ain't so tiny, can we recommend BlueChew? Boy, I'll tell you what, you're going to have a hard on so big you'll think that it's people writing in the dirt sheets about Jeff Jarrett. Why not give a little stroke at home? That's what we're talking about, and getting a few extra strokes in, maybe a little guitar necklace here or there. Blue Chew, boys and girls. Come on, day one sponsors of ours. We're so grateful and thankful that they're still sponsoring our podcast. And if you haven't tried it already, what are you waiting for? I'm a big believer in this. I think you will be too. Man, it's PEDs for your wiener. Who doesn't want that? It's got the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime, day or night. So plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. All you got to do is sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll get your prescription within days. And here's the best part, y'all. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. You're going to love it. Try it right now and try it for free. That's right. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. So discover those options at BlueChew.com. Let's chew it and do it. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay the $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is MyWorld, and you'll receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. And I also want to go ahead and plug adfreeshows.com. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? You can be a part of our live studio audience. I want to give a special shout out to folks who are hanging out with us early on a Monday morning. Eric Green in the house and Coach Rosie in the house. And greatly appreciate Doug Ritter and Mike Nunley and Coach Keith, always down to clown. Bryant is here, Denovia Smack, Bobby. Greatly appreciate all you guys coming to hang out. We not only have a live studio audience and you get the shows early and ad free, you get bonus content from all of our hosts every single month and lots of great series you can't find anywhere else. Once a month, we sit down with Lex Luger and we call it Lex Express. We also have a weekly show with Mike Chioda. It's Monday Mailbag. And we've got one with Nick Patrick, another Monday Mailbag. They alternate. And every single Tuesday, here he comes. The Taskmaster himself. Tuesdays with the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, exclusively on adfreeshows.com. And a real highlight for me each and every month is when I sit down with a member of wrestling royalty, Mr. David Crockett, and we talk about the good old days of Jim Crockett Promotions. We're going episodically through 1985 and 1986, and we're taking a look at his brother's Red Books. And you can actually see the real booking sheet of how wrestling used to be, what the matches were. And more importantly, how many people were there? But maybe most importantly, how much money did they make? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Behind the scenes look at Jim Crockett Promotions, exclusively home at adfreeshows.com. We just debuted a new bonus series with the Sandman last month called Inner Sandman. And we're doing an episode called The Insiders, a very special episode coming up. I'm going to be recording in a few days for the false finish, where someone leaves wrestling, but man, it's a happy ending on the other side. All this and more for years worth of podcasts available for you starting at just $9 at adfreeshows.com. So if you haven't already, check it out, adfreeshows.com. Jeff, let's talk about the pay-per-view. It is not well received by the critics, and Meltzer would even say after an abysmal first half of the show, TNA never really got going on their Destination X pay-per-view in Orlando in front of the usual full house of 1,100 fans. And there's lots of criticism and there's lots of, they're even being critical of the opening segment where, you do the voiceover and you're talking about the economy and it's kind of dark and you're trying to tie it all together. But then the bell rang. Our first match, Taylor Wilde and Roxy and the Governor taking on Angelina Love, Velvet Sky, and Madison Rayne. They go 5 minutes and 4 seconds. The Governor came out in a Sarah Palin style suit and high heels. That feels like that is just needs to be put out of its misery. But boy, these knockouts, man, they draw ratings. You got to have them on pay-per-view. What do you think of the Governor look and feel?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because we talk so heavily about the Main Event Mafia and our record numbers. Buy rate was up on that. But at the exact same time that the Main Event Mafia was going on, I believe if we pulled up a picture of the entire Knockouts division, the beautiful people, Taylor Wilde, very diverse group. ODB. There was, I'll say this: the diversity in the knockouts division, there was no cookie cutters. We had all different shapes and sizes and characters and personas. And I think that was, in a lot of ways, what made it work. And so when you watch the 2 hours of Impact, and as it rolled along, it wasn't obviously all main event mafia. We had X division and we had knockouts. And in the tag division, anchored by 3D and Beer Money and Motor City Machine Guns and others. And so the kind of the groove and the cadence of the show, I just say all that to say it wasn't all main event mafia that should get the credit, because it was a real unit. I complimented production on the empty arena match. It really was a complete unit pulling together.
Sarah Palin knockoff. Go. It sucked, Jeff. Just say it sucked.
Hold on. It wore out its welcome.
Yeah, there you go.
It did, because coming out of the gate, it was a different look, a unique look. It hung around too long.
It was garbage. Stunk after 3 days.
Okay. You're one of those 100 people that knocked it. No, I was sitting there as you were reading the reviews. I'm thinking, okay, this is 100 out of the 30,000 buys, not people.
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, I don't know if you saw this, but I saw a poll that he ran a handful of years ago, and he was asking for people to vote in the poll. And I guess he was busy. And I understand that. Hey, life happens. I think the poll posted where someone was soliciting feedback before the show actually started. So before the show started, it had an overwhelmingly negative number of votes.
Stop it.
It's like, wait a minute. I know he posted the poll because he's thinking people will watch it and then give their honest opinion. But people were like, oh no, TNA sucks. I hated it. Click, 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 click. And it's like, wait a minute now. What are we doing?
That's the world we live in, pal.
Yeah.
So they vote before they watch.
The show hasn't aired. Like,
in today's U.S. politics,
yeah,
it's the same thing. They're voting before. Yeah, crazy.
No matter what you're looking for, you're looking for a slant, and I don't know. It's a big game, and you just got to understand the game.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a write-up here from the Torch. Lauren interviewed Jeff Jarrett and Mick Foley backstage. She says the main event mafia will be stronger no matter who wins between Angle and Sting, because the belt will still remain in the group. Jarrett said this will test where Sting really stands. She asked if he'll be impartial, and Jarrett said, I'll call it right down the middle. The best man will win and remain the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Lauren asked if he heard what he just said. She turned to Foley, who said for Jarrett to do his job, he'll have to do his job and keep the main event mafia away from ringside. And Foley said, it seemed to be hot in here, but maybe that's because Angle gave him the fever. A Brutus Magnus graphic appeared on the screen for no reason. And then Foley thanked Angle for the feeling and said he'd see him at ringside. So I guess the idea and storyline here is you're trying to make sure Sting is the champion, and we're trying to set up Kurt and Sting and Foley to match up. And then right in the middle of this promo, randomly, there's a production snafu.
I was going to say a production snafu. But look, I think that's how Dave and his readers or whoever was helping him, what we were trying to convey, me and Mick, is, hey, man, let the best man win. No funny stuff. Main event mafia stay out. You two guys fight it out. Not to try to, I think probably hearing this, I had to go back and really watch this. We were probably tap dancing around inside baseball without trying to be inside baseball. But I think the messaging is Kurt, Sting, go battle it out. Whoever wins, wins.
Let's talk about the next match. Brutus Magnus, who we know these days as Nick Aldis, pins Eric Young in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. Look at that look on Brutus Magnus. How would you describe that look?
He's a Houdini helper.
Houdini helper.
David Copperfield. He looks like kind of a
What are you talking about? He's wearing S&M gear.
Okay. Well,
It looks like he's ready to whip you with a cat of nine tails, and you have a secret word. You have a safe word.
bless his heart.
Yeah. I mean, he looks like the third member of Demolition right there.
There you go. There you go.
Face
That's
paint.
more appropriately named.
Well, that's what. Let's not pretend that's not what Demolition was. Goodness gracious,
I
I
don't-
loved him when
I
I was a
actually
kid.
don't remember him having this at all.
Me neither. Like when I'm used to seeing Nick Aldis, he's wearing a custom tailored suit. He's not.
I wonder if this is Dixie influence because she was very influential early for him.
Hey, whatever y'all do, if you're listening to this, please don't take a picture or a screen grab from my world on youtube.com and tag at Nick Aldis on all forms of social media with that picture. Please do me a great personal favor. Do not do that. Don't tag Nick Aldis at Nick Aldis with this photo on Instagram and on Twitter. Don't do it. You better not.
I just hope. Well, I better not say that.
Hey, shout out to Nick. He just had a little freak accident and had a little surgery, but he's okay and on the mend. I think he hurt his pride, is what he told me, maybe most of all. But let's put a smile on his face and send him that silly outfit at Nick Aldis.
There you go.
We've got Sheikh Abdul Bashir coming out and complaining that he wasn't booked on the pay-per-view. And he said he's sick of American prejudice because of the color of his skin. Cornette comes out and said the color of his skin has nothing to do with it. He just doesn't like him and he's tired of listening to him, calls him a jerk, and brings out Neil to sing God Bless America. And Bashir walks out all sad. Now we've got Matt Morgan and Abyss in a match where the winner was the first one to put the loser into thumbtacks. It's a match of 10,000 tacks. They're brawling all over the place. Abyss tries to choke slam Morgan off the ramp onto the thumbtacks on the floor. Morgan escapes, uses a low blow, comes back with the carbon footprint, which is a bicycle kick. He kicks Abyss off the ramp onto the tacks. I mean, knowing Abyss, like I think we know Abyss, when he first brought those tacks out, you just knew, well, Abyss is going in those, right?
I mean, look, we'll call it the white outfit of Abyss. I think he would tell you this today. It didn't exceed our expectations, but this match, it just is kind of a testament to his work, his work ethic. Not the easiest to have a brawl all over, but he delivers, man. Yes, we did think that when the table of tacks, but I thought the presentation again was pretty damn good on their part.
Let's talk a little bit about Win a Night with ODB. That's the next segment on the show. It's a contest. It's one of those quote unquote campy, terrible segments that's okay. Well, not okay, but at least acceptable goofy on television. Okay, not acceptable goofy, but at least when it's horrible, it's not like you were paying money to see it. While this was going on, I couldn't help but think that there are people who haven't learned any better, and they were paying $30 for this. The positive is that Jeremy Borash is great in the Gene Okerlund role of taking a totally ridiculous concept and somehow keeping it together, but it really sucked. It was a mock of the dating game. 3 bachelors beating Shark Boy, Bernie Weber, played by TNA marketing executive Mike Weber, and Cody Deaner, a Canadian independent wrestler who signed with TNA months ago, and this was a segment to get him running. They danced, gave double entendre answers to questions, and finally, because Deaner said his hair wasn't the longest thing growing from his body, ODB picked him. This is all on pay-per-view, a dating game. And my favorite part about this is that Borash has to hold it together. The ridiculous look of ODB in this outfit and Cody Deaner and Shark Boy. And then there is a real life business executive in a suit standing in the ring. Bernie Weber is the real life Mike Weber, formerly of Fight TV. Now I think it's called Triller TV, at least for a few more days. What in the world, man? Talk to me about this segment and how the shit did you get Mike Weber to do this?
Oh, you gotta love it. It was fun. The folks that like, I can't believe you put this on pay-per-view. Go watch a 2-hour movie. You got to have a little comedy relief. We know people didn't pay money to see this, and if you give them 8 hours of wrestling, then it's all the same. But this was obviously, as you stated, the kind of storyline to get Cody Deaner and ODB up and running. But the execution of it, again, the award for most outstanding actor in a segment, Jeremy Borash. So over the top, so ludicrous, ridiculous, but he learned well from Mean Gene. I'll just say this, but this was in his element. And look, Bernie Weber, our friend Mike, did fantastic. Shark Boy, it was. Look, folks, if you like comedy and wrestling, go back and watch this. It's a fun segment, Connie. It's a very fun. Look, I'm totally skipping over ODB knowing how to get her character over. Oh,
so good.
God bless her, man. Super talented, super talented. Going back to the diversity of the knockouts was part of their magic.
I bet if ODB were getting hot right now, like she was back then, 15 years ago, she'd be a huge star for WWE.
And a merchandising banana
machine. Yes.
machine. Yes.
Like you want, I mean, that
she's ahead of her time. No doubt ahead of her time.
Awesome Kong is out next, pinning Sojo Bolt in 4 minutes and 17 seconds to retain the Knockouts title. We had to have something follow what we just did, but maybe it's not the Knockouts division of old. Scott Steiner is here wrestling Samoa Joe, but they get DQ'd in a minute and a half. Meltzer was saying, this is Wade. Joe absolutely should not have been allowed to go out looking like that. If he got out of shape, then give him an outfit to hide it. Joe attacked Steiner, busted him open, and then the referees, Rudy Charles and Andrew Thomas, when he grabbed the pipe, Steiner brought him in and hit him with it. He was DQ'd, and people couldn't believe it. They booed this heavily. Joe did a tope after the match, then they brawled to the back, and later in the show, they went backstage, and Joe had his face all covered in dirt, and he was holding this giant saw-like knife covered with blood. I didn't even know that we could show that on YouTube. But he teased that Joe had done something awful to Steiner. There had been a lot awful done at this point. What in the world were y'all doing here, man? A minute and a half on pay-per-view, a DQ? What is going on?
Again, going back to ratings versus buy rates, it wasn't an advertised main event match, if you will. And we were trying to, I don't want to say repackage, because a repackage is a new character, but look, Joe came in with that massive winning streak. Hard to follow that in totality, and trying to give him an edge because a kick-ass Joe, well, we're seeing it as we sit here today as the AEW World Champion. Is the money is in that, and so we were just again trying to tweak things with the face paint, and no need for either guy to go out there and have a 10-minute match, damn sure not a 15-minute single match, to go out and give the short story to move on into the character development, the progression of Joe with the tweaks to his character.
Next up, we've got AJ Styles working with Booker T for the Legends title. And believe it or not, AJ Styles wins the Legends title. And the fans are into this match more than any other match on the show. Of course, a lot of that is because of their love for AJ, I'm sure. And it's a real wrestling match.
Yep.
2 stars in the Torch, 2 3/4 in the Observer. I thought this was a pretty good match. What did you think of the chemistry between AJ and Booker?
Being in the ring with a guy like AJ and Booker's competitive nature and stature, they tore it down. They just flat out went after it and got it. And in that impact zone, the people exploded. They did not expect AJ. That's the short answer. They didn't see that coming. They didn't think AJ would win it. So it was built right. Booker came on the scene with that title, and this was a good babyface strong win.
Next up, we got Team 3D beating Beer Money by DQ, and then a count out in a match that was for Beer Money's tag titles. But if 3D lost, they would be the ones who had to leave town. So the crowd is now starting to cheer Beer Money because they realize they're one of the more entertaining acts on the show. This is all according to Wade Keller. And they were about to do the 3D on Rude, and Storm hit Bubba with a chair for a DQ in 9 minutes and 57 seconds. And out comes Jim Cornette, who says it's not going to be that easy. These people here want to see a winner and a loser. We're going to restart the match, this time with a no DQ stipulation. So they hit Storm with the 3D right away. Rude pulls Storm out of the ring to break up the 3 count. They went to the desk, and Don West gives them their tag belts, and they walk out. They lost by count out in the restart in 1 minute and 23 seconds. Meltzer would say, or Wade would say, the idea was that this was supposed to put heat on West. It's funny because West was still trying to praise the hard work and action across the board while also praising the heels. In doing so, he once again came off like a face, particularly when challenging Mike Tenay to try and justify that for Samoa Joe. For all we know, he used a knife to slice up Steiner's head. And somehow Tenay had to back the ridiculous babyface behavior that even the fans weren't behind. You can get away with this kind of double screw job looking of one match, but when you have a really overall good show. But this match hardly left you with the feeling that you had heat with the heels, unless you considered the promotion the heels. So Don West, man, doing his best. I do like the story, but this feels, again, less like a pay-per-view payoff match and more like a TV match with a screw job finish, like a few in a row now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Context, the heel push that I was big time against, but I caved on that, if you will. That to me is the hindsight 2020 moment, that trying to lean into that. But look, at the end of the day, the simple finish, if you would have taken the Don West and Bubba and Devon at the table talking to them, is that Cornette restarts it, heels leave with the belts before they can get beat. That was the DQ, if you will. And again, going back to the master, we wanted to push this storyline and not blow it off. We wanted to push it back to Impact to keep it going on TV.
Next up, we've got Suicide winning the X Division title. That's the real-life Christopher Daniels in an Ultimate X match over the champ at the time, Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin, Jay Lethal, and Consequences Creed, who we know these days as Xavier Wood. They go 14 minutes and 10 seconds, and there's a Fallen Angel chant at Suicide. Meltzer would say not the best Ultimate X, but pretty damn good. 4 stars in the Observer, 3 stars in the Torch. This is high risk, high reward. This to me is TNA at its best. And I know that we're going to argue that it's the storyline of the next match that sold all the pay-per-views, and I get that. But this was the difference to me between a WWE show or pay-per-view and a TNA pay-per-view, the X Division. I bet you heard that a lot, though, over the years. Did you not?
And it's true. And this is a very good, in my opinion, a really, really good Ultimate X match. And Daniels he's a QB in there, a quarterback in the match, very, very good. And the Suicide character was selling. He was a top seller of merch, and the name of the pay-per-view being Destination X, and the players that were in the match, who needs to win this match coming out of it, what will be the best for the company. And it was a pretty, I have that good a memory, but I'm pretty certain it was like a unanimous decision. Suicide leaves with the title, and it was good, really good. Those guys are so athletic. I always marveled, and what you're saying, at specifically the Ultimate X matches, but the X Division matches, knowing at the time you can't see this on the other channel, you can't see this on broadcast, you can't see this anywhere else on cable television. The X Division, you just couldn't. Those guys are so damn good.
The main event is here. You got 2.5 stars in the Torch, 3.25 in the Observer. Sting pins Kurt Angle to retain in 13 minutes and 50 seconds. You were the referee. Foley was the enforcer. Angle was bound and determined to have a Kurt Angle main event here, but Sting, just a week shy of his 50th birthday, this is according to Wade Keller, simply can't perform at that level. The crowd's got the dueling chant. There's a lot of heat here. Ultimately, we know that Sting gets the win. What do you remember about this match? Take us through it. You were the third man in the ring, which is rare for you.
Yeah, and the thing that I remember in the creative rooms that, hey man, in theory, we're putting two heels in the ring, and that was a topic of discussion. But this again, I'm going to go back to the story was so good, and this night, once once everybody got to the ring, and Mick there, and me there, Sting, Kurt, it just felt right, and you know. I don't know if that was Wade or Dave or whoever criticizing Sting's work. I just think to myself, you are probably comparing him against Kurt. And Kurt's in a different gear and a different speed, but I thought that it was a hell of a match and a hell of a story being told. And again, the momentum internally of us, not just the Main Event Mafia, but knockouts and, the Ultimate X before this tore the house down, and knowing where we were at and where we were headed and live events on this, we all felt really, really good coming out of this pay-per-view.
What's interesting to me is everyone almost unanimously dislikes this pay-per-view. I mean, it got bad reviews, and I remember reading that it was one of the worst reviewed shows in TNA history. And Meltzer, not Meltzer, I keep saying that, but Wade wrote just paragraph after paragraph about this, saying that the main event felt like Groundhog Day, and quote, "It's excruciatingly frustrating to watch the same mistakes made over and over on the booking side, and so many talented wrestlers underutilized, and so on. I was angry after the first 2 hours of this show, literally upset about what TNA is doing to pro wrestling, to Samoa Joe, to the Divas, to the whole concept, to lowbrow humor, to Don West." And he says the last hour saved the show, but he would go on to say the worst moment of the show was the new look of Samoa Joe. Quote, "Not only is his outfit unflattering to the point of almost seeming like he lost a bet, but his entire knife wielding gimmick is in line for the worst gimmick of all time, and that wasn't meant as a joke." What'd you think of the repackaging of Samoa Joe? The rumor and innuendo is that this was a Russo call.
I remember it as being a group call, and me as, I'll call it, the leader in the room, I kept kind of telling folks, nothing is permanent. We can tweak this along the way. We're probably not going to come out of the gate, but we all knew. And again, I'm going to go back to when you have a year and a half, that's a long time that we pushed Joe with never losing a match. And the trilogy that he had with Kurt and him finally losing, it's a kind of a natural letdown. Well, now here we are, 2 years after that? We were just trying to tweak, and there was never a time creatively that we're like, I mean, Joe, he's not just good, he's great, and his facials are good, and we were just trying to tweak it. We knew we didn't hit a home run coming out of the gate with this. We'll call it on the tweaks and twerking, if you will, tweaking, if you will, of Joe's character. No, we couple of snafus along the way, to put it lightly.
Let's do a few questions, then we'll wrap this one up. Tim Dillon wants to know, shout out to Tim Dillon, appreciate your comedy. Was there ever an attempt at another TNA video game?
Lots of discussion. I mean, probably before we finished producing the first one, the sequel, those were discussions. There was always a discussion, even as late as, oh man, because our licensing department, from broad strokes, there was money to be made, but we also knew, to kind of back up in that licensing mindset, we were looking for that next show. So, to have another 1 hour on Spike or somewhere else. We were looking at more coverage and more awareness, because at this 2009, 2010, yes, we'd been on cable television for a few years, but it's still hard to cut through the clutter, period. You just have to keep on keeping on. And it was a different day and age. You got to remember, social media used correctly is maybe the greatest marketing tool in the world. There was no social media in 2009, so to speak of.
Well, there is social media today, and thankfully there's YouTube. And we want to hear your questions for next week's episode. We're going to be talking all things WrestleMania 15 from Philadelphia.
Ooh.
Yes, that is the Vince Russo WrestleMania. 25 years ago, you and Owen Hart were tag team champions, and here we are 25 years later, and WrestleMania is back in Philadelphia. We'll be talking about the Giant, now the Big Show, coming into the WWF. You're going to be doing some commentary. You'll be teaming with Owen. You'll be working on the show. Of course, we're going to talk a little more Steve Austin. All this and more when we talk about WrestleMania 15, 25 years later, next week here on the program. And we want to hear from you. Do you have a question about Jeff in 1999 or about WrestleMania 25 years ago? WrestleMania 15. Well, ask us right now on YouTube. That's where we're going to be soliciting all of the questions for the podcast. It's My World on YouTube.com. So check us out, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell so you'll know when we go live. And if you drop a question for us on YouTube, that's where we'll be pulling them for next week's show. And we'll be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, talking WrestleMania 15. In the meantime, if you'd like to get the word out about your product or service, well, it's easy to advertise here on the show. Just check out advertisewithjarrett.com. You can also keep up with all things Jeff Jarrett at Real Jeff Jarrett on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook and all that jazz. We've also got some brand new swag and merch. King of the Deathmatch King, The Last Outlaw, The American Dweem, and of course, The Chosen Son of a Promoter, all available now at boxofgimmicks.com. Go take a look at the new swag if you haven't already. Jeff, I never know what to expect when we click record. We covered a lot of information. I can't wait for us to talk about the April pay-per-view from 2009. TNA Lockdown 2009 will be on deck next month. But next week, man, we're getting in the mode for WrestleMania.
How about that? In Philly, right?
Does it feel like 25 years ago to you?
No, but I'm going to tell a little Road Dogg story next week about this Mania.
I can't wait.
And
love me some Road Dogg stories.
I got to touch. It's an after hours story.
Those are the best ones.
Buddy.
We'll get all that and more next week right here on My World.
Peace.